Ever get that feeling? Like you're right on the edge of saying exactly what you mean in English, but something's holding you back.
Absolutely.
Well, today we're diving deep into that exact challenge. We've sifted through a mountain of advice on improving English skills, and we're pulling out the 12 absolute best strategies you can start using, like right now.
Right, exactly.
We're talking about speaking more fluently, really understanding native speakers, even writing with more confidence.
And the advice we're looking at, it's all about getting results quickly. So if you're ready to level up your English fast, this is the deep dive for you.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. We've got 12 distinct and totally doable methods for you to weave English into your everyday life and seriously boost those language skills.
Let's do it.
First up, a big one, immersion. When we say immerse yourself in English, what does that really mean in practice?
Well, it's about making English a constant in your world.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. It's not just those study sessions, right? It's more about shifting your whole environment so English just becomes the norm. And the reason that works so well is because of how our brains actually learn. So when you're constantly exposed to English, your brain starts to pick up on those patterns, like without you even realizing it. You know, you start absorbing vocabulary naturally, getting a feel for the flow of the language.
That makes sense. It's like almost like osmosis or something. You're just surrounded by it.
Exactly.
Okay. But beyond, packing up and moving to, say, London or New York, what are some real ways people can create that immersive environment in their own lives?
Oh, there's a ton of really simple things you can do, little tweaks that make a difference. For example, first thing, change the language settings on all your tech. So your phone, your social media, all those apps you use every day, boom, instant English vocabulary right there.
Makes sense.
Another one, and people don't always think of this, follow English-speaking creators online. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. You're probably already spending time on those platforms anyway. Might as well make them learning opportunities, right?
It's like turning your downtime into like passive study time.
Exactly. And it doesn't even feel like studying.
Right. So smart. What about like in your actual physical space? Any tips for bringing English into your home?
This one's almost too simple, but it works. Label stuff around your house with English sticky notes. Sounds silly, I know, but every time you see that word on that object, it reinforces it in your mind.
I never thought of that.
Oh, and another one, those virtual assistants, like Google Assistant, Siri, Alexa, switch them to English. Every time you ask a question or give a command, you're practicing.
Right. Using English in your everyday life. Okay, you mentioned switching to English for TV and movies too. Even if it feels like you're missing a lot at the beginning, is that still a good way to immerse?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you don't catch everything at first, stick with it. Your brain is way more adaptable than you think, and it'll start recognizing those sound patterns, the intonation. You can even start with subtitles, maybe in your own language at first, then switch to English subtitles. Eventually, you'll be able to ditch the subtitles altogether.
Okay, so it's like we're really immersing ourselves, like flooding our world with English. Awesome. Point number 2 is about actually making those sounds. Speak English every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but you gotta actually speak it.
Now, for some people, that can be a little scary. Why is that daily speaking practice so important?
It's kind of the missing link for a lot of people. You can learn all the rules, you can have a great vocabulary, but if you don't actually practice speaking, you won't become fluent. It's like learning to play an instrument. Like, you can read all the books in the world, but until you actually pick up the instrument and play it, you're not gonna make any music.
You gotta get those fingers moving.
Exactly. Same with speaking. The more you speak, the more comfortable you become, and the faster those words start flowing naturally. You're building muscle memory for language.
So it's about moving those words and phrases from like the back of your mind to the tip of your tongue, even if it's just practicing. But what if you don't have someone to practice with? What are some good ways to get that daily speaking in?
Okay, this one might sound a little weird at first, but talk to yourself in the mirror. Seriously, describe your day, think out loud, whatever. It's a judgment-free zone to practice putting sentences together and thinking in English.
I've definitely done that before.
Right. Another one is using language exchange apps. Tandem, HelloTalk, Cambly, things like that. They connect you with native speakers so you can practice conversations at your own pace. And then, this one's super helpful, record yourself speaking English.
Oh, no.
I know, it can be kind of scary, but listen back to it. It's eye-opening, You can hear where you need to work on your pronunciation, where you can be clearer.
Like brutal honesty from your past self.
Exactly. And you had a little challenge in mind to make speaking a daily habit.
I did.
Lay it on us.
Okay, here it is. Every morning, Say 3 complete English sentences about what you plan to do that day. It's a small thing, but it gets you speaking English right from the start, builds that confidence.
Love it. 3 sentences, anyone can do that.
All right, on to point number 3, and we touched on this with immersion, but let's go deeper. Sharpening your listening skills.
Can't forget about listening.
Why is understanding spoken English just as important as being able to speak it?
I mean, think about it. They're 2 halves of a conversation, right? You can't really communicate if you don't understand what the other person is saying. Having good listening skills, it makes you a better communicator all around. You understand more. You pick up new vocabulary without even trying. You start to notice those subtle things, the way people really speak, and ultimately you just feel more confident.
So, any tips for really training our ears and boosting that comprehension?
Absolutely. Listening to podcasts is a fantastic way to start, especially ones designed for English learners. BBC Learning English has some great ones, so does the British Council. You can even slow down the playback speed if you need to. Watching movies and TV shows, as we talked about, that's another great way to get your ears accustomed to the language. Oh, and this one's a bit more advanced, but it's really effective. Shadowing.
Shadowing? Sounds kind of mysterious. What's that?
Basically, you listen to a short audio clip and then immediately repeat it, trying to mimic the pronunciation, the intonation, everything as closely as you can. It helps you really focus on the sounds of English.
I like that. So give us a real-world example. How could someone use shadowing while, say, watching their favorite show?
Oh, simple. Pause the show after a character says a sentence, something not too long, and then try to repeat that sentence exactly how they said it. Really pay attention to how they pronounce each word, the melody of their voice. Then replay the original sentence and compare. It's like a pronunciation workout for your ears.
Awesome. So point number 4 takes us to our vocabulary. Time to build up that linguistic toolbox. Why is having a strong vocabulary so important for English learners, no matter their level?
A bigger vocabulary means you can express yourself more clearly, understand more of what you read and hear. It gives you more tools to work with. It just makes communicating in English feel easier and more natural.
Makes sense. But what's the best way to build up your vocabulary? Rote memorization can be pretty boring, and it doesn't always stick. What are some more engaging strategies?
Consistency is key here. Instead of trying to learn a ton of words at once, aim for 5 to 10 new words every day. But here's the important part. Don't just memorize definitions. Use those new words and sentences. Make them real for you. Flashcard apps are great for this, Quizlet, Anki, things like that. They use something called spaced repetition, which helps you remember things better. And another tip, learn word families. So don't just learn happy, learn happiness, unhappy, happily. You'll start to see how words connect, and it expands your vocabulary much faster.
That's way more efficient. You're not just learning words, you're understanding the concepts behind them. Do you have an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you learn the verb run. Instead of stopping there, also learn runner, running, and ran. See how that one word suddenly gives you 4.
That's a great point. Okay, moving on to point number 5. Read more in English. We've talked about listening, but how does reading help us overall?
Reading is like a secret weapon for language learning. You come across new words naturally within context, so you remember them better. It reinforces your grammar, your sentence structure, and it just gives you a good feel for how English flows.
So with so much to read out there, where should someone focus their efforts? It could be overwhelming.
If you're just starting out, try graded readers. These are books specifically written for English learners, so the vocabulary and grammar are controlled. As you get better, move on to news articles from good sources, like the BBC, CNN, The Guardian. And don't forget to read things you actually enjoy, whether it's comics, magazines, blogs about your hobbies. If you're interested in what you're reading, you'll learn much faster.
Right. Make it fun. It shouldn't feel like a chore. I think you had a little reading challenge for us, too.
I did. Try to read something in English for just 10 minutes every day. It doesn't have to be a novel, just an article, a blog post, anything. And while you're reading, jot down at least one new word you come across. Do that every day and watch your vocabulary grow.
Small steps, big results. Okay, point number 6 gets into the nitty-gritty. Mastering English grammar. Grammar can feel a bit intimidating. Why is it so important for effective communication?
Yeah, I get it. Grammar isn't the most exciting thing. But honestly, having a good grasp of English grammar is essential for communicating clearly, especially in a professional setting. When your grammar is strong, you avoid misunderstandings, you come across as more credible. It just makes your English more powerful and effective.
So if our listener wants to focus on specific grammar points, where should they start?
The basics are super important. Verb tenses, prepositions, those can be tricky, and basic sentence structure. There are some amazing resources out there that can help. Apps like Grammarly give you instant feedback on your writing, and there are textbooks like Cambridge English Grammar in Use that are clear and easy to understand.
Those are good ones to check out. What about when you're learning a new grammar rule? Any tips for really making it stick?
Definitely. After you learn a new rule, write a few sentences using that rule. Like, if you just learned the future perfect tense, write 3 sentences about things you'll have done by a certain point in the future. Making yourself use the rule in a real context really helps it sink in.
It's like taking it for a test drive, seeing how it works in action. All right, on to point number 7. Practice writing regularly. How does writing help us improve our overall English skills?
Writing is a fantastic way to practice everything you're learning. You have to think about vocabulary, grammar, sentence structure, everything. Plus, it helps you organize your thoughts clearly and express yourself in English. The more you write, the easier it becomes.
But again, where do you start? It doesn't have to be writing a novel every day, right?
No way. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Start an English journal where you write about your day, your thoughts, whatever comes to mind. Write posts and comments on social media in English. There are even online forums and communities where you can practice writing and get feedback from other English speakers.
I like those ideas.
Yeah.
Very approachable. And I think you had a specific writing challenge in mind too, right?
I did. Tonight, before you go to bed, try to write just 3 sentences in English about the main things that happened in your day. It's a quick and easy way to practice without feeling overwhelmed.
Perfect. 3 sentences to wrap up the day in English. Love it. Point of 8 gets a little more mental. Think in English. That sounds tough. Why is it so important to try to think directly in English rather than translating in your head?
Translating everything in your head slows you down big time. It creates this bottleneck in your thinking. When you can think in English, you can speak and write much more fluently and naturally. It also helps you develop a deeper understanding of the language.
So how do you even start doing that? It feels like a huge step.
Start small. Have little conversations with yourself in English, in your head. Describe what you're doing, what you see, what you're going to do next. Actively name objects around you in English. And when you come across a new word, try to use an English dictionary to understand it instead of translating it back to your native language.
So you're building those connections directly in your mind, English to English. Do you have an example?
Okay, so instead of thinking, let's say, I need to buy groceries in your native language, and then translating it, try forming that thought directly in English in your mind. It'll feel weird at first, but it gets easier with practice.
Right, retraining your brain. Cool. Point number 9 is about taking those skills out into the world. Use English in real-life situations. We've talked about practicing. But why is actually using English in real life so crucial?
It's the whole point of learning a language, right? To communicate with people. Real-life situations, you can't really replicate those in a classroom or with an app. They force you to think on your feet, understand different accents, and just get comfortable using English in the real world. That's when you really start to see your progress.
So what kind of opportunities should people look for?
Be proactive. Order your food in English at a restaurant, even if it feels a little scary. Ask questions in English when you're shopping. Ask for directions in English if you're lost. See if there are language exchange meetups in your city where you can practice with native speakers. And if you can't find in-person opportunities, join online communities and forums where people speak English.
So many good ideas. And didn't you have a challenge for us related to using English in real life?
I did. Next time you're at a cafe or restaurant, try ordering your whole meal or drink in English. It's a small challenge, but it can really boost your confidence.
I like that. A little mini mission to put your skills to the test. Awesome. Our 10th strategy is all about adding some personality to your English. Learn common idioms and phrases. Why are idioms so important?
Idioms are everywhere in everyday English. If you don't understand them, you'll miss out on a lot of what people are saying. Plus, using idioms makes you sound more natural, more like a native speaker. It shows you understand the nuances of the language.
So give us some examples, like some common English idioms and what they actually mean.
Okay, so if someone tells you to break a leg before a performance, it means good luck.
Yeah, that one's always confusing.
Right. If someone says they need to hit the books, it means they need to study. And something is a piece of cake, it means it's very easy. These little phrases add color to the language and make you sound more fluent.
You're like a walking, talking English idiom dictionary.
Huh. And you had a challenge about idioms too, right?
I did. This week, try to learn 3 new English idioms and use them in conversations. Even if you only manage to use one correctly, it's a win.
Absolutely. 3 new idioms, let's do it. All right, moving on to point number 11, and this is a big one. Stay consistent and motivated. We all know learning a language can be frustrating sometimes. Why is consistency so important, and how do we stay motivated?
Yeah, motivation can be tough sometimes.
It's the key, though. Even short, regular practice sessions are much more effective than cramming every now and then. To stay motivated, set achievable goals for yourself. Maybe it's learning a certain number of words each week, or practicing speaking for a certain amount of time. Track your progress, maybe use an app or keep a journal. And find a study buddy, someone to practice with and keep you accountable.
Like a language learning partner in crime.
Exactly. It helps so much to have someone on the journey with you.
And I think you had a bit of a, let's say, ambitious challenge to really push people to stay consistent.
I did. If you're feeling really motivated, try speaking only English for an entire day. It's a real immersion experience, even if you're just at home. It'll show you how far you've come and where you still need to work.
That's a bold move.
Yeah.
All right, our final strategy, and maybe the most important one. Have fun while learning. Why is it so important to enjoy the process?
Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore. When you enjoy it, you're more likely to stick with it, you learn faster, and you remember things better.
Makes sense. So how can we make learning English more fun?
So many ways. Watch funny videos in English, like stand-up comedy or funny YouTube channels. Play word games in English, like Scrabble or crosswords. Listen to English music and sing along. You can even play video games in English or join online communities about things you're interested in.
Turn your hobbies into learning opportunities. Love it. And I think you had one last fun example for us.
I do. Pick one of your favorite English songs, learn the lyrics, and then try to sing it from memory without looking at the words. It's a fun way to practice pronunciation and vocabulary and just have a good time.
That's awesome. So there you have it. 12 powerful, actionable strategies to take your English to the next level.
And the most important thing is to just keep using them. Keep practicing consistently. Make English at the heart of your life and enjoy the journey.
Exactly. As you think about all these tips, which ones really stood out to you? Which ones feel like they'll really work for your learning style and the areas you want to improve? That's a question worth pondering as you continue on your English learning adventure.
And remember, it's a journey. Keep experimenting, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep having fun with English.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today on The Deep Dive. Keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.